Welcome to the chaos.
So for this aspect, what up, everybody, and welcome back to the chaos. I'm your host, Mikey Tableman, alongside my co-host,
Danny J. Gomez. We're jumping right in with this one. Woo!
We're very excited today. We have on an executive producer, director, and one of my very good friends, Miss Brett Qualters.
Hi, guys.
Qualters.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you for being on.
Thank you.
I've been looking forward to this one because me and Brett go back, and man, if anybody has like crazy stories, like she's writing a book.
Eventually.
But
Eventually.
she's got all the. This woman has more crazy stories than most people, but also an incredible background as well. So let's just.
That feels like a bit of an oversell, but it's okay.
You're writing. Okay, so what have you thought of your opening? For the
Yeah,
book?
I kind of do have like the entire memoir sort of like mapped out and sort of like how I plan on presenting it. I just haven't actually like sat down to write the stories, which now kind of feels silly in hindsight because I'm starting to forget a lot of the stories. So I feel like probably should have been writing it as I went, but it's okay. It's gonna happen eventually.
I started thinking about it. I have like in my notes section. I just have book and like any idea. I'm like, oh, I gotta put that in the book.
Oh, I have like whole like all my chapters like outlined,
That's
like
great.
little gimmicky things about like how I want to do it. I just haven't actually sat down to write it yet.
Yeah.
No. Like I have like a half of a chapter done.
I got the first draft of my book done, but every
Yeah.
time I'm like, oh, I want to redo this part. Then I want to redo this part, and then I redo the whole thing. Like I've redone the first draft twice already.
Look at us going from blacking out on a nightly to writing books.
Look at us. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Not me.
Uh,
Not me.
that's adulting for you.
Right.
So let's get to the beginning of your memoirs, though. So just give us a little bit about where you started and how you've got this elusive career that you don't give yourself enough credit for.
Oh, thank you. I guess it started originally back when I used to throw parties in high school when my mom went out of town. So that's where
Oh, I love high school
I
parties.
feel like that's
Sorry.
where we all got our start, because I threw some wild ones.
I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that's where I actually started in this whole event planning, party throwing world. Because I used to have a lot more fun throwing the parties than actually, as it kind of has carried through, attending the parties. I much prefer throwing parties. So
You
I
gotta
was
give us,
always
like,
sober at my own parties and just making sure everyone else had enough alcohol, booze, whatever, and just I started there. I guess from there, when I went to college, I actually originally wanted to go into theater. I wanted to be a director, and quickly realized that that was not the path that was going to make a lot of sense, I guess, in the end. I just got really good. I just like knew I was really good at throwing parties. And
Tell
so,
us a high school party like that you threw that's memorable, because we love to hear those stories.
What's your Project X story?
Yeah.
it's oh god. I guess the most memorable one is it was my senior year of high school. And my mom was out of town. She went away a lot for business, and my girlfriends and I at the time, we had some of my guy friends. I used to have this like really tight clique of guy friends. Were in college, and my friend John was like, "Oh, I'm gonna invite my fraternity." I was like, "Sure."
Oh.
It's definitely not a good idea to invite a Boston fraternity to your house in the suburbs.
Probably not.
So, definitely had the cops called on us. Definitely. It was bad, and I remember cleaning up the party. But the funniest thing about the party was actually how I got caught. Because I dealt with the cops and my neighbors, and I talked to them, and I was like, okay, please don't tell my mom. Please don't tell my mom. I made all my friends stay and like clean up the house. But what I did not think through was that I actually had put all of the beer cans in the recycling bin instead of actually getting rid of the evidence. And so my mom came home, and I got the whole Brett Marie, get in here. So you know when you get the middle name.
Oh, you know it's bad
You know
when
it's
you get
bad
the
when
middle
you get
name.
the middle name.
How many recycling bins did you have that fit all those?
I don't even remember. She just
She's
said,
using her neighbor's cans as well.
she just said, do you want to tell me why there's hundreds of beer cans in the recycling
Should have been
bin?
like somebody else put them there. She got no proof.
And I was just like, nah, I'm caught. I didn't even try. I was just like, all right. I mean, it was fine. I think I got grounded for like 2 weeks or something, but it was just really comical that was the stupid thing that's how I got caught.
Looking
is
out for the environment.
And I knew better. You like get rid of the evidence, take it to the trash dump down the street. But I don't know. I guess I just got frazzled because we had so many people. I didn't have a big house, and it wasn't like a big I didn't. It wasn't like a huge place, and we had like so many kids show up because of the whole fraternity thing. So that's where I just got a little out of control. So
I threw one party in my high school days, and that was all I needed. Because people, like small town in New Orleans, Chalmette, if anybody knows Chalmette, we're Chalmatians. We have a track record. Anyways, everybody thinks we wear like shrimp boots and walk around with suspenders and. So they got wind of my party.
Did you?
Of course, man. I have that in my closet for
rainy days.
wear it, yeah.
Rainy days.
So we threw the party, and like just people from different parishes just started showing up because it's small towns and like word gets out. So like I had a small 3-bedroom house that we lived in, and a single story, and like there was like 1,000 people in the front backyard.
Oh, I didn't have 1,000, so
Yeah.
that's.
I mean,
that's...
I'm probably overstating that.
It was like,
but that's what it felt
that's
like.
like a mini
That's
festival.
what it felt like. It's probably like 50 people, but
Next thing you know, like someone is falling through the front window, getting in a fight. My dad's lasagna is on the floor in the kitchen. My sister's on a table, 5 foot nothing with a stick.
Oh my
like,
gosh!
Get the out of here! Yeah.
Did anything get set on fire?
No fires.
Okay,
No
well
fires.
that's good because it could go.
My friend's
badly real
boombox,
quick.
somebody dropped beer on it, and
so I got grounded. We threw a lot of parties at my mother's house. Well, I got grounded for a whole summer once because somebody got too wasted and vomited all over her brand new rug and brand new sectional sofa that she bought
Ooh.
that got delivered that morning.
ooh.
The
She
whole
was
summer, huh?
Oh yeah, she was livid.
Yeah.
So I guess we all got into parties for
Yeah.
a reason.
That's how I started.
So where to go next?
I guess it's funny because my career was just so not linear in the traditional sense. And I guess when I left school, I didn't really actually know what I wanted to do. Long story short, because I won't drag this out too much, I ended up down in Miami with an ex of mine at the time. And I had like walked into one of those like fancy restaurants on Ocean Drive. A lot of the jobs that I've gotten have really just been me like randomly walking in and talking myself into a job. And I started at this place in Miami as the event director for this restaurant. So it was like a fine dining. So that's really where I started. Again, no clue what I was doing, no idea what was going on. I just talked myself into a job. And then that was really the first program that I my strength, and Mike can attest to this, is program development. That's really what I pride myself on. And having these positions where I go in and it hasn't existed before and then creating something from nothing. So that's where I started. In Miami. And Miami was kind of wild. Didn't love it. Still don't love it.
I love it for like 5 days.
Yeah, living there was not super fun. I guess, well, okay, so it's kind of twofold. I have been into the electronic music rave scene since I was probably 18. So that had always kind of been more of a passion of mine to go to the raves and do the club scene from a guest perspective. And then at the same time with the job, I was kind of getting into production and events. It just so happened that they didn't fully intersect until I got to LA. So I moved out to LA in 2010 and was working at the time for a celebrity chef and was doing, again, like, I graduated to like Oscar parties, movie premieres, blah, blah, blah.
So nonchalantly. like yeah, I ran the Oscars, no big deal.
No, I didn't run the Oscars. It was just Oscar parties.
I walked in and told them I can do this, and they gave me the job. And then I ran
no,
the
I don't-
I ran the hell out of it.
Not downplaying. I mean, it was a great intro, like doing the entertainment side of it and working in the, I did some really cool movie premieres and got to work with some really fun celebrities on that side of it. But I mean, music has always been my passion. And so I guess the way that I kind of got into the where I'm kind of like the last 10 years of my career has sort of developed has been in this music festival rave culture from a executive production side of things. So my Insomniac, the way that I got the job at Insomniac was probably the most like kind of LA story. Like it just felt like one of those LA things that like never would have happened if I was at home. And this was sort of the moment that kind of changed everything for me. So I was working for a restaurant group, and I had my office was in Westwood, and it was like a Saturday night. I had been working, I mean, you guys know, working in the restaurant industry, you just never get days off. You work a bazillion hours. And it was Saturday, and I wasn't even supposed to be in the office working that day. And I was trying to get out of the office, and it was like 8:30 at night, and I just wanted to go home. And I got a phone call from the host stand that was like, hey, there's someone on line 1 that wants to talk about planning their rehearsal dinner. And I was just like, fine, I'll take the call. Because I really just wanted to go home. And so I take this call and I'm talking to this guy. We're just, shooting the about what he wants to do for his rehearsal dinner, what kind of food he likes. I don't know. We were just, the normal client talk when I try to put people at ease. So by the time we got to the point where I'm like, okay, give me your contact info and I'll put a package together. I'll send over pricing. And he gave me his name and it was at Insomniac. And I was like, oh, I'm talking to someone from Insomniac, because I had known who Insomniac was the entire time that I had been out in LA, because at that time they really were the premier predominant, production company putting on these music festivals. And I had been so heavily involved in the rave culture at that point. So I just literally blurted out. I was like, "Oh, you work at Insomniac?" Still, at this time, don't really know who he is or what his position is. And he's like, "Oh, yeah. Do you know us?" And I just remember being like, "Do I know you? I want to work for you." And it turned out that he was the CEO of the company. And we just started talking about music, and I told him how much I loved the company and that I had always wanted to work for them. And so he was like, all right, cool, send me your resume. I was like, okay, this, again, LA, I was like, all right, sure, I'll send him my resume, whatever. I'll never talk to this guy again. And I remember I went home and I spent like 4 hours putting this email together because I was like, oh, this is my shot. This is my shot. What do I do? And I was so nervous about what I was sending to him because, again, I didn't even really know what he was looking for.
You sent a picture of you like in neon at one of his parties.
Looking back at it,
in a rave outfit.
I probably should have, but I was so worried about being professional, and it wasn't until much later that I realized like Insomniac was not even at that level of professionalism at that point.
Because they brought like the rave scene to the the general.
Yeah, to the forefront.
It used to be like a very underground thing. You're right.
To mainstream.
Yeah, 2010 was really when it went mainstream. So I grew up on the East Coast. So I grew up going to all the raves in New York. I lived in London for a little bit. I did all of my like diehard party days in like London, New York, Miami, like all the big cities. And LA at that time wasn't considered one of the main cities for the electronic music scene. So it wasn't until about 2010 that it started to shift. And LA kind of became sort of the main hub for where the music was coming out of and where these big events were being produced. And Insomniac definitely was sort of at the forefront of that. And that's why I knew who they were, because I've always, Mike knows, I like stalk the industry. I know the trends. I know what's going on. I know who's doing what, when, and where. And so I, again, sent him my resume, not really expecting too much out of it. And, went back and forth, and he actually like responded, and it took a while, but he finally calls me into the office, and I like have this meeting with like the CEO of Insomniac, like just talking myself into a job. They didn't even have like an actual position. He was just kind of like, all right, what do you want to do? I'm like, what do you need? And so I started out, because my background at that time had come from really like a food and beverage side of things. And he was just kind of like, all right, we want to look to enhance the food and beverage program. And it started with that. And then it started with, and I actually was working, who Mike works with now, with DLS. David was like the first person that I kind of paired up with, and he was kind of helping me navigate this scene that I had never really done from the other side. I'd always gone as a guest. And then from like food and beverage, then they added VIP. And then the best was the day that he called me in, and he was just like, so what do you know about bottle service? And
it's the best and worst day of your life.
I was like, I don't know. What do you want me to know about it? Because I just didn't really know where he was going with it. And, at that time, I knew what it was, but I hadn't really, I'm not like your typical like bottle girl. Like I hadn't been going, like when I go to the club, I was always GA, like on the ground, in the front at the rave. So, I do what everyone does. I lied and I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. Because at that point they had someone from a nightclub in like Vegas was doing it and was like, and Mike can attest to, when you bring in, and no disrespect to the clubs, but doing bottle service at the festival is so different than doing it in the nightclubs. And the guys in the clubs kind of struggle with the transition of going outside like their four walls and having
like
everything they
like
need.
Workers,
it's a brick and mortar. So like,
yeah.
when we go to the nightclub every night, we know that we go to the service station, we know where everything is. But when we do the festival, we actually have to build a service station.
Yeah.
and make sure it's operational
So if you
with
never
a minimal
actually-
spot.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it's a lot harder to do at the festival because not only are you building it, but like so many more things can go wrong at a festival that they, again, with a lot of these club guys are just used to having it in their, and it's the same. They're doing it every night, and every night it's the same thing. And, we're at the festival, I can't tell how many times we lost power, we lost Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
the gets moved, like your deck changes, like, we've had decks shrink where we've sold a number, like there's all these different things that come up, and you have to really be able to roll with it and think on the fly and fix problems. And not that you don't have to do that in nightclubs too. It's just it's in a much different atmosphere.
It's more controlled than.
Yeah.
Way more controlled.
And so in the festival, a lot of the club guys kind of struggled making that transition when we would work with different nightlife institutions to come in and like whatever. When I first started, and Mike knows, like when I first started, it was just me. Like I was literally doing everything. I was running check-in, I was like managing the deck, I was like doing the cash outs at the end of the night. Like it was like a department that they had wanted to grow but hadn't really like put any resources behind it. So again, I'm in this role now with this essentially dream job, like wanting to work for Insomniac, for a long time, and basically just being like, okay, here you go. And like I just had to figure it out. And I spent the first like 3 or 4 years literally just winging the whole thing and like working like a maniac because I was running the VIP, I was running the bottle service, I was doing the food and beverage. Then they were like, oh, here, we'll just add sponsorships onto your plate as well. And then I got the sponsorship, and then like it was just they kept adding stuff. And it was at the time it was still a really small company, and this was before Live Nation had come in as kind of like part owner. So it was just it was
grew
still
so
it was
fast.
yeah, it grew super fast, and it was still just like a real like startup mentality when I was there. And it was just a bunch of dudes that like, were throwing a party essentially.
Right.
And so I was trying to come in and make this like legitimate side of the business for them.
It's just like when you were recycling those beer cans.
Exactly. So it was a struggle. It was hard. It was really hard for the first couple of years. And I worked around the clock and I worked nonstop. And, I was combating some other things too, because I was a female running VIP and bottle service, which you guys know, traditionally, that is always a male role. Like I don't really even think I could name many nightclubs off the top of my head that has a female as like the main director and like overseeing the whole operation. So I was tackling not only like not having the resources to like figure out how to like run this on my own, I was also then dealing with, being a female on top of it, and trying to really make sure that I was able to basically be more respected and looked at seriously, because it does become a lot harder as a woman to be taken seriously, because we had, every show in every city, we were partnering with different nightclubs. And so I had to always deal with these guys. And Mike knows promoters are still like the bane of my existence.
Oh man.
Well, we would go places and like deal with the promoters, and they would come talk to me and like we want to do, and like they wouldn't even, like some of them wouldn't even acknowledge her.
Yeah.
Would come up, give me a hand, like shake my hand, wouldn't even acknowledge her, and they're like, hey, we want to do. I'm like, you got to get her approval. Like, what do you mean? I was like, she's the boss, and they would be so taken back. And then she look at them like, yeah, and I'm like, oh. Here we go
Yeah,
again.
no, it happened a lot. It happened all the time. Andrew did it, you did it. The good thing is, when I finally brought Andrew and Mike onto the team, I felt super lucky because they understood sort of what the struggle was as a female in this particular part of the industry. And they really had my back. And same with Johnny. Johnny was my production partner who did all the design. And so Johnny and I really kind of like ran things together.
There was like 6 of us in this little family.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It definitely became a family really quickly. A super dysfunctional one, like most families are, but a family nonetheless. But I was lucky that I had these guys, kind of advocating on my behalf when we did go into these situations where 90% of the time they look right past me and go right to Mike or go right to Johnny. Even when we got a different CEO that came on board, I don't know, like 5 years later, there were so many times he'd call me and Johnny into meetings and just, rapid fire to Johnny. And Johnny's like, I don't know why you're asking me. This is nothing. Like, talk to her. She's the one in charge. And, that was just kind of a daily occurrence. So, I felt lucky that I had the guys' support, and they were always kind of redirecting the attention and getting people to, like they respected me and they backed me. And I was always grateful for that, because it was a definite additional layer on top of all the other stress that I was dealing with in the position that I was in. So
How was it dealing with all that stress? Because like we know as we controlling the chaos in the industry, and what most people that are in our festival world is very niche. Like she's saying, the added layers. Like there is so much stress. So like, how did you deal with all that? And there was a lot of things that you had to overcome.
I mean, not well. I mean, it was definitely.
As none of us do.
Right. We think it's well at the time. Like, I feel great now.
Yeah.
I think that what I was really I was struggling with two things. One, I was struggling with sort of the merger of something that had been my passion since I was a kid, that had essentially like developed this real like core part of my personality, this rave culture, this rave community, dancing. I have this favorite DJ that I've been, a fan of for 25 years and have seen him over 100 times all around the world. And through this job ended up becoming like friendly with him, and I'm friends with his wife, and like all these weird things were shifting where this scene that I like grew up in was now all of a sudden becoming my work. And that's a really weird shift that I hadn't really put a lot of thought into once I started working in the music industry. Because I thought that, again, merging your passion with your work, in theory, it's like what everyone wants. Like you want to be passionate about what you do. And I was, but then it changed what the passion was, because now I just looked at it as work. So it was I was going through like a really weird kind of trying to reconcile that for a while. And then, of course, just, I mean, the stress of trying to build these departments. And so the other part that I was doing is that not only was I building it on the back end and doing the financials and doing the budget and doing the POS and doing the bar menus, I was also the only one for a while doing all the client stuff. So I was one of like a very few handful of people, and Mike knows this, that can actually do both the client and the operations. It's usually like someone is one or the other. And there's not a lot of people that can do both. And it's not like I'm saying, oh, I'm this like wonderful human. It's just, it's different skill sets. And I just had come out of, working in the restaurant, in the event world, dealing with clients a lot, that I just knew how to deal with these types of clients. So I was just doing so much. And it was really hard for me to keep up. And I mean, I definitely didn't have a life. I didn't sleep for, 8 years.
And that'll suck the love of it out of anything that you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of ultimately what ended up happening towards the end of it. And again, Mike knows, he's been there with me through a lot of the really tough times. I went through a lot of really low points, and I went through a lot of times when, so I'm not a big drinker, but I did start leaning on other substances to like keep me awake, put me to sleep. Like it was this constant like up and down, up and down, up and down, to try to juggle the demands of the job and the demands of the actual festival. I think what I learned over time is that like innately I'm an introvert, and I feel much more comfortable in an introverted kind of environment. And I had this job that was like the exact opposite in every possible way, and having to be this extrovert and be on all the time was really hard and really draining. And that is why I had to lean on some, outside substances to try to keep me awake or take off the edge of anxiety or whatever. It was just, it was a mess for a while.
When people like get to know our group, because like we were on the road 250, 260 days all over. And this is the time where like we had a network. So we were out at the club every night.
Mm-hmm.
We were at dinners every night. When people actually got to know us and they're like, wait a minute, y'all don't like, no, she wants to stay home, read her books. I want to stay home and do poetry and meditate. Andrew wants to go search for rocks. Johnny wants to play Dungeons and Dragons.
It's true.
Myron's wants to, like, none of us wanted to speak to an individual, but we were the most popular. Like, whenever city we went to, because we were the VIP, we were like the most popular people that came to the city.
Yeah.
Like, we got royal treatment everywhere.
We went. And that also, pissed a lot of people in the company off at certain levels as well, because we were actually, I mean, I would say my two superpowers as a boss or as a whatever, producer is the program development piece, which I'm good at and I love. I do know how to take something from nothing and really build it into something that matters. And I'm really good at finding I basically got to handpick this team. Every single person on this team, Mike, Myron, Andrew, Michelle, Gia, McKenna, I brought them all in. And it was a really unique opportunity that I probably will never come across again, that I was actually able to handpick and build a team from the ground up. And that was...
We all blame Brett for all of our problems.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually said that, because that's one of the... I had two questions about what it was like developing the bottle program, because festivals didn't have that before, right?
No.
And you created like a whole new thing that I think you kind of bypass a little bit, because it's probably just old news to you, like the Skydeck, right? You created that.
Yep.
So maybe speak on that, and also I wanted to speak on the qualities that this young man right here brought to the picture, that you were like, I want him.
I was the final piece of the puzzle too.
Yeah.
No, McKenna was after you. But
McKenna's
you were
on the VIP side,
right,
though,
right.
yeah.
So for the Skydeck piece, you were. All right. Well, to speak to the Mike part first, it was funny because Mike was still came in early days. What year did we start working together?
15?
Was it 15?
15 or 16?
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
So I met Mike at Sundance. So we all also have this other
the famous Sundance.
the
party.
famous
Sundance
Sundance
party.
party.
She has to go with me, her and Myron too. Yeah.
Oh,
If you missed
Sundance.
those, catch season 1. We'll have to plug the episode that
Myron Batson
we talked about Sundance.
Sundance.
Oh,
Sundance was always a hot mess. But we all also
great hot mess. Though.
What?
A great hot mess. We had a lot of fun.
I have more of a love hate with Sundance, but
And as we're recording, Sundance is going on right now.
right now,
Yeah.
it's everyone was at the towel party last night. I'm like, oh, don't miss that actually.
No.
But we all worked for this other woman, Kim, who was another one in the industry that, like, again, we all like it ends up becoming a really small, as you both know, it ends up becoming a really small industry once you're like in it and everyone knows everyone. And Kim, who brought you in? Did Stu bring you in? Stu brought you in. Okay, so Stu had brought Mike in
To be at TSA?
No, you were bartending.
Bartending,
Yeah, he was bartending. Sundance, and my role at Sundance, she always put me in charge of the Chase Sapphire Lounge. So I was always running who we worked with, like they had different like Acura Lounge, whatever, like all the different lounges at Sundance, and I was always on Chase, and Mike was bartending at Chase, and I don't know, we just hit it off to start, and I'm just good at like
East Coast.
Yeah, like that's the other funny part is like the whole team is actually East Coast.
East Coast base.
Yeah.
It's like really funny. Like Mike, Johnny are,
Upper East, yeah. Gia, Florida.
I feel like there's a work ethic, like the East Coast, and like I'm from New Orleans, like
Yeah.
service industry is our life, and it's something you can't teach, that when you come to LA, you're like, the is going on here with the service?
Like, I'm baffled how some of the TSAs, I'm like, how are you this up? This is so easy.
Yeah, even like going to a restaurant, I'm like, what is this? Like,
I think it was also too that like what I was really good at doing is when putting our team together, and I think it is an East Coast thing, is you have to be like really snarky and sarcastic to like work in our group, because we're just awful to each other.
It's shots all day.
Like all day. And I mean, it's part of just how we deal with the stress, and like because we're together 24/7. But it is just that kind of like, I don't know, like that East Coast mentality. Like it's very different than what it's like out here in LA. And I didn't even like, I wasn't intentionally like pulling East Coast people. It just ended up working out that way. But I think with Mike, I saw how good he was. I was able to see him with the guests, see him again, just like end of the night. I needed someone at that point in time because the program was growing really fast, and I was not in a position anymore where I could, run check-in, run the deck, do the VIP. I was looking for more help, and I don't even remember how I brought it up to you.
You asked me about running the bar. You're like, hey,
Yeah,
I have an event in New York. I'll fly you out. I need somebody to run the bar program.
No. That was not the first one.
Oh, yeah.
Because
the way you introduced me. Yeah, man.
I hazed you.
Oh, my God, did you haze me?
oh, let's hear about that.
Oh,
I
man.
hazed him.
She gave me so they're like, hey, we have this client that we're bringing in. Was
super
very
high maintenance.
Super needy, but didn't really give me much about what I was getting myself into. And
I felt it was better that way, so you couldn't
pretty
back out.
much. So all of a sudden, it's like, here's 20 wristbands. A party bus is going to pick you up. Get on the bus. I'm like, And what else? Like, oh, don't worry about it. When you get here, we'll take it from
figure
there. So literally, I was handling this group of
Deep end.
20 people and like very, very sweet people.
And the show, that venue we were at, we couldn't actually run the bar. Like the venue was still doing the bar, but I wanted Mike to come in and just like test him
I mean,
out.
a couple of things happened that weekend where I ended up pretty much on a deck by myself, not knowing what the I'm doing because I never managed before, taking care of the biggest client and the deck. There was these two clients. They had like a gang
the gang war.
Literally, they're like
What
in the
the-
middle.
Yeah.
All this happened, and I survived. And Johnny, who I just met for the first time, was like, "Yeah, he can hang." And then after that, like, "All right, you want to stay?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, why not? This is cool."
And then I put you on
Like,
New York. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, because this is when we were working nightclubs, and the pay
Mm-hmm.
was starting to go to. So I was in Create, maybe making $100 a night, maybe $250.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
bartending, maybe $200. So now I got a couple of grand for a show. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm
It's good
down
money.
for this.
Yeah.
And then it just started to. It took me a little bit to. I was welcomed at first by some, and some other people. Andrew was not very happy I was there. So like there was a lot of little figuring everybody out. But after like
Everyone
6-7
rolls.
months, we all kind of gelled.
I mean, and that was the thing. It did take everyone because I had handpicked everyone. There was always this sort of like, it felt like a battle of like who was in the top position for me, where the reality was everyone just had a very different role. Like Myron was running VIP, Mike was coming in to head up operations, and Andrew was actually on the client side doing sales. So everyone had like their place. But there was definitely a lot of it. It took a minute
It's
for
your all-star team.
Well,
and
the
Yeah.
funny thing,
you gotta
and the funny thing, is, me and
mix the
Andrew are the only two.
personalities.
Me and Andrew are the only two left.
that's
And
yeah.
me and at first, me and him did not get along. We didn't like each
Nope.
other. And now I talk to the guy 6 out of 7 days out of the week. He's one of my closest friends on top of my work partner.
Yeah.
So
And it was, it took a long time to, I mean, it was definitely like a slow development of building the team. And then once we built the team, then it was like another kind of period of like all having to figure out how to work with each other. And I, again, the joke was that, I mean, I was basically mom. Like the whole joke was everyone, it was like mom, mummy, mom, mummy, mom, mom, mom. Like
know what's
every
so-
day it was, I'm like, okay, one at a time, please.
It's so cool because in season 1, I kept hearing about this mom character.
yeah,
And like
That
to
would be
finally
me.
like season 2 to have. Can I get a hug, mom?
Oh, of course.
well, the funny thing is now that I'm in this position, like there are times where me and her would butt heads a lot because I was frustrated, felt away. She had frustrations that I wasn't seeing. So now that I'm in that position, like I call her like, and I'll be like, yo, she's like, no, I get it. We're the only two people in the world who really understand it. And she's the only person I can call when I'm really stressing
Yep.
because there's so much on our plate that people didn't get. And like, I think when I first took it back, I called, I was like, yo, I'm really sorry for all the I f***ing gave you.
He did. He apologized, which I was very happy about because
Yeah.
he did put me through a lot of So I went through a lot of
Good and
all of
bad,
them.
yeah.
All of them.
Right.
I
Yeah, 'cause
definitely
we had that and working in LA and where we worked at the time, we were stuck up. Like we had like
I definitely had the
sometimes
ego phase
the
when I
ego,
came in,
yeah, we had the
yeah.
ego.
I mean, it's hard because if you look at like who I am, like I am the last person on the planet that should be running bottle service. Like it's just not like it's just like not who I am. And all of a sudden I'm in this position that was also weird for me because I am not like it just I told you, like, I'm a rave kid. Like, I love being in the GA. But then all of a sudden, I'm thrown into this role where now all of a sudden, like, everyone in Hollywood is, like, blowing me up, wanting guest list this, guest. I'm like, oh, my God. Like, it was a lot for me. Like, I didn't enjoy it. And I've got, like, a Mike and an Andrew and a Myron who had been a little bit more engulfed in this world a little bit longer than I had. And, all of a sudden I have to, I know all these promoters, I know all these, and I hated it. Like it was just, but they were, so there was a period when they, it being in the position we were in, there was definitely a sort of inflated ego that came alongside it because at the time everyone's like, oh, you work for Insomniac. Oh, you work for Insomniac. It was literally like, one of my favorite Myron stories was when me and Myron and Andrew were in London and we were doing EDC UK for the first time. We were helping them fix their VIP. And I forget what club we were at, but what kind of everyone forgot is that Insomniac is big in the US. So Myron and Andrew thought they were just gonna roll up to this door at like one of these like top clubs in London and be like, "I work for Insomniac," and they were just gonna like open the the velvet rope and be like, "Please come on
Which
in."
it did work. If we were in Vegas or something like that, and we
Vegas,
pulled it
worked.
especially like if EDC Vegas was in June. So if we were there in April or May, anywhere we went, we dropped that card, we were golden.
Yeah.
But we're in the UK where
Nobody gives
nobody gave a flying. And they literally walked up, and I'm like, guys, this is not gonna work. It's not gonna work. They don't know who we are. They don't know who we are over here. They're like, it's fine, and like go up to the bouncer at this club, like, we work for Insomniac, and the guy just literally like looked at them and then like looked away, like didn't even acknowledge them. I was like, I told you guys this is not gonna work here.
This happened
Just
one of
deflating. It's just so deflating to the ego.
But it was good. They needed it.
They needed
I was the one that's like, you all need your egos checked.
Yeah.
Like, we need to put this
You were
in
literally
check.
mom back there like.
I was literally momming it the whole time. Like, put it in check. Like, this is not, like, let's not keep pulling this card to get it, and it didn't work there.
Yeah.
We were, while I was at Insomniac, we were starting to build the international presence. But the EDC UK show was like 2017. It was still like early on with the global expansion.
Recent, yeah.
And so the other great part about the position that I ended up being in is because they started to realize like you need VIP and bottle service like at every festival. Like it became a huge revenue stream for them. It also, bringing in the clientele that we were bringing in. And there weren't many people at the company because when we did the shows abroad, we always had a production partner abroad because they had to deal with, the government, the politics, the permitting of that particular place we would go. So I was one of maybe like 5 or 6 people in the whole company that was really doing these international shows, and really being on the ground as the global presence started to build. Because at that time, Ultra was way more recognized worldwide than EDC was. So that's why it was still pretty funny to watch them walk up and have it not work and just get rejected by this bouncer at the UK club. But again, it was always kind of, as the global presence grew, it started to work in more and more places.
But
that
just meant we got to
did he go back there for part
places.
2?
Huh?
Did he go back to that club for part? I'm getting in this bitch.
I'm getting in now. You know who I am now.
I think at that time, because I don't like doing a lot of things, but there's certain things that I am good at, and I had ended up like I always say I should have been like a CIA, like worked for the CIA with my investigative skills. So I had like somehow gone online, figured out who the event person at the club was, like found her information, like reached out to her direct, told her who we were, and like through all of this, then she was like, "Oh, why don't you guys come in at night?" So like I'd worked it out and got us in like another back way that, but I mean it requires that like whole outreach, like it's a lot of work. So we did eventually get back in, but it was still just pretty funny.
Right.
I mean, we could sit here for hours with the funny story. I mean, our road trip from Atlanta, the road trip in Atlanta was wild. The Atlanta festival was wild.
Well, you gotta
Mexico.
divulge the secret.
What was
I have a very bad time in Mexico.
Mexico, we had some wild stories. I mean, we definitely had like a lot of ridiculous. Mexico was always one that we would come back with. Like, I don't even know how all of us got out of Mexico in one piece.
Multiple years.
You
ago.
got arrested in
Multiple
Mexico,
years.
right?
I got arrested. I broke my arm.
You broke your arm.
We got a cold. We got really sick.
The first time I brought down there. Now, again, I didn't think anything of it. Because this was before the Mexican team had, because like their show was still kind of new. And so we were down there like literally helping them with like POS systems. So has all of these iPads like in his backpack, like he's going to help like use for like the POS system and VIP. Not really thinking anything, but it's Mexico. He's got all these electronics. Instantly pulled him the second he gets off the plane and goes through, they pull him into the room. And I'm like, where did go? And everyone's like, I don't know. I'm freaking out because I'm like, oh my God, where did he go? They literally just took him.
Yeah.
And I'm calling the show, the executive producer of the Mexico show. And I'm like, Laser, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Where did he go? What's happening? And he's like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'm like, I don't know where he is. Like, we can't leave the airport. And so, I mean, it ended up being like a whole thing, and like,
It's a good thing they found out because then 2 years later it happened to me.
the only time that I remember being like panicked is we had like the president's son came once,
Oh
and
yeah.
there was like issues with like, because obviously we had metal detectors down there, and we don't allow guns to be carried on to the shows, but they had to have it for protection. I mean, there was like just all this like wild stuff of like trying to figure out like how to navigate these people, and not like have it be this like giant show on the deck. So that was a good learning curve for all of us.
What was it
Dealing.
like introducing the deck style concept to all these people who are? Did you get a lot of those high end clients at festivals before, or was the deck something that attracted them after?
Um, it okay. So no, the deck is definitely. It was definitely kind of happening simultaneously. Like when I first came on board, they had done some version of like a table service, like not in the scale that we were doing it. They had like outsourced all of it. It didn't work. They'd done something in Vegas before, and it wasn't really like at the caliber that they wanted it. So there were clients that like wanted to come and have this experience. And so kind of like simultaneously as like I'm fielding inquiries and talking to people, I'm starting to like figure out how to build this program and this experience for them. And a lot of the stuff that we did, we really did do it before anyone else did it. Like our whole front of house experience was something that like I conceptualized like I don't even remember how long ago, but and we really were the only team that was like providing these kind of like essentially once in a lifetime experience for these clients. So the growth kind of like as we got more clients, we were able to kind of like shift and like figure out what we needed. Like, I think that was the best thing about our team is that we were able to kind of like pivot and figure out like we were constantly talking about like what didn't work, how do we fix it, how do we fix it. So it was kind of like a simultaneous growth of the program and the clientele.
People
Um,
still get like people try to do the front of house. The only time it's successful is when we have gone to other festivals with clients. Now, when we run a front of house like in EDC Vegas, there used to be just one. Now we're running four. So like we've expanded this
so much.
operation. So like she laid this foundation for all of us. Like, we kept on doing it, doing it, doing it, and then as she kind of passed it to me, it's like okay, cool. Now we got it to a science. How do we expand it?
Yeah.
So
Take
she
it and
like
run
laid
with
all the
it.
foundation.
Yeah.
I got to expand it all, and then now even the people like Chris and Lindsay and Mizuki, who are now kind of I'm passing on to them. They're even figuring out how now to take it to another level. So it's been really cool to watch from its infancy. Brett had it as a baby, I had it as a toddler, and
Yeah.
now they have it kind of growing up now.
It's so cool. Literally, like the mother tree, all your little
Yeah.
branches are all over
Yeah.
the world now.
I will say that like it was a really it was an interesting for me like looking back at it. It was a great experience because it definitely gave me I mean they're all like essentially my best friends now, and we are friends. We got to that point where like everyone knows you have like you're I used to call it trauma bonding because we'd go through these like
It's definitely trauma bonding.
experiences like all around the world that were literally like traumatizing.
I've heard that term before a
Um,
few times on the show.
yeah, trauma bonding. But we were able, for me, it was great that like coming out of it and separating myself from it, that we were able to like grow the friendship past just like the work relationship or the trauma bonding, and like now like they're actually like my family. And so I have a lot of pride in in what I was able to build, um and sort of like what the opportunities were that were kind of allowed out of this experience that I was, able to build, like doing shows in China, doing shows in Japan, doing shows in Mexico, doing shows in Europe, like really traveling and kind of seeing this culture that I grew up in, like expanding worldwide. But at the same time, by the time I hit the last Insomniac show, like I was just so burnt out. Like I was just a miserable, horrible human being. And I was just like, I cannot do this anymore. Like I needed out. And I was so mentally exhausted. I was so mentally drained. I was just not in a good place. So it was kind of this duality of like having it be like both the best and like worst experience simultaneously, which is like a really weird thing to say. But that's really how it felt. And I knew that when I made the decision to leave, which was like one of the hardest things to walk away from. It was so hard for me to walk away from. And it honestly took me like probably like a year and a half to actually
Oh,
do
you were
it.
saying you were quit. I mean, we've all said we were quitting after every single show, but only a
No,
couple
for
of you have
me,
actually
like
done. But
for
yeah,
for
you
me,
it
it
took
took
you a good.
it took me like almost a 2 years to like actually be able to like be like, all right, I'm walking away from this. And I did. I mean, I walked away from it without a job. I was just like, I'm done. I'm over it. Peace out. I like quit, and I like didn't have anything lined up. And in hindsight, that was a very risky move to just walk away and not have anything.
What's the timeline on that? So you got
Uh,
LA 2010, right? And then
I got to LA 2010. I did my first Insomniac show in 2013, and then I did my last show in 2019. Um, and yeah, so then I mean, it was like literally like right before the whole COVID debacle. But I yeah, I would say that like if I like do the math based on all the international shows, like I've done like over 100 festivals in that
Jesus.
timeline.
Well, from everything you did in Insomniac, though, because I mean, this woman, we're talking about all that, but we can do a full other episode on what she's done the last couple of years, because she's been like Emily. Brett is Emily in Paris. She has now lived. She lived in San Tropez for a couple of years. Then she was in Saudi Arabia for this whole past
Yeah.
year. So she took everything there and now has done it on an even crazier scale.
I've definitely taken the skill set that I sort of honed in on over the years and have now again, like I love working in music, and the experience I just had with this opportunity in Saudi Arabia, where like Saudi Arabia now is like really like launching this music scene with all of the kind of the cultural shift that the country is going through, and being involved in the music scene on that level like made me feel like it was like the early days of Insomniac, where it's like that excitement of like what we're doing matters, like this music matters, these experiences matter. People need a place to go to be able to just shut off for a night. I mean, and that was ultimately what was the driving force for me doing these shows, was that we were creating experiences that still to this day, some of our biggest clients tell me how much like I had impacted their life, or how much our team had impacted their life, or how much the experience had impacted. I mean, I got invited to like weddings for like some of the VIP guests. Like I've gotten wedding invites because they met at the show, and like I mean, just like all these crazy kind of personalized experiences, which was what was prompting me to do this in the first place. So going back to Saudi Arabia and being around a crowd that had like newly sort of discovered this scene, and watching these people sort of experience this music culture for the first time in the capacity that they are, was really probably the most sort of like rejuvenating kind of messaging for me in the last couple months of like, oh yeah, this is why I did it. This is why I went through what I went through.
so that's super recent. And
Hmm.
how did you end up there in the first place? And why is the culture like that? That now is the music scene is coming up.
So I started when I left Insomniac. I got a job offer in New York. I've been moving around. Mike knows I've been like in and out for the last 3 years, like moving around.
Emily in Paris.
Uh, and so I had actually like moved to New York right before COVID, working with this production company out of New York. That's awesome, and I love them. And they had brought me in to EP this like very specific project that was going to put me in New York for like 6 to 8 months. I got out to New York, and then obviously, like I literally got out to New York like February 12th. So like a month later, the whole world shuts down, and then the project was canceled. Obviously, I came back to LA, but the company just, I mean, they're great. They just kind of like constantly checked in on me. Like once events started to come back, because obviously for like the first year of COVID, like we were all
Nothing.
like, I like wanted to kill myself, like literally, because it was so hard to go from 100 miles an hour to having absolutely nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
And I've only ever like really learned how to operate at 100 miles an hour. So, but this company had always kind of, once events came back, just started checking in on me, and they had reached out to me a year before to ask me about this Saudi Arabia gig. But at that time, like Mike said, I had already committed to a job that had moved me to the south of France. So I passed on it then. When they reached out to me this year to just be like, hey, we have no idea where in the world you are or if you're even free, but we have this other, like the Saudi Arabia sort of program like had expanded, and we have this other role that we'd really love for you to take on. And at that time, I was looking to get out of the south of France anyway, because that experience it wasn't quite Emily in Paris in the traditional sense of all, fun and games. But I was looking to get out of that position anyway, and sort of pivot. And so the timing just worked out really well. And so this company brought me on board. And so to answer your other part of that question, the reason that it's such an important kind of cultural movement right now is that Saudi Arabia, up until like 2000, I think 16 or 2017, I don't know the exact date, has never been allowed to have live events.
Oh.
So they've only, within the last 5 years, women can drive, which I know sounds insane, but women can drive, and they are really kind of shifting to this, like, I mean, you've probably all read about the whole thing with the golf, and they're really trying to bring this entertainment component. And a big piece of this kind of cultural shift that it's called the 2030 vision, is that they're bringing all these they want to do all these events, these music events. So a lot of the people in Saudi Arabia, for whatever reason, it was a very underground scene for a bit. Now it's the first time that they can actually do this out in the open and dance. And the coolest thing for me was like being at the event, because there's so many rules in Saudi Arabia. Like, like I couldn't show my shoulders or my knees, and there's all kinds of like different, and being gay in Saudi Arabia is still like punishable by death. Like there's still like crazy like inhumane kind of laws happening. But when you're in the context of our event, there's a kind of like an unspoken agreement with the government that like people want, like they want this to succeed. So we were actually able to see in the event, like for the first time, like girls could wear whatever they want and they weren't going to get in trouble. Like people could be, more, I wouldn't say necessarily like openly gay, but they could be more themselves, we'll just say, and no one's going to bother them. And so being able to like be on the ground to like witness that firsthand was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I could just feel people just being happy and like
it was
feeling
great.
free, like almost like a sense of
yeah,
freedom.
It
Right?
was.
Yeah, like feeling free, feeling like themselves for the first time ever.
Yeah, no, it was pretty incredible. So I feel super lucky to have had that opportunity and to be a part of it in a small way.
I mean, some of the videos you showed me, like Bruno Mars's performance was incredible. The stage they had, like you gotta send us some of the videos so we can put up during the show. Like it was incredible. It looks so cool.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely putting some good money into it and putting the production behind it, and they're bringing in these artists that also, for the artists it's a big deal because they've never performed there. And so there's a lot of really, and it does, I'm not discrediting that it does come with a lot of kind of controversy around it, because a lot of people are still very outspoken in terms of a lot of the inhumane elements to what's still happening there. But the way that I kind of look at it is that in order to make change, you have to start somewhere. And this is a start for them. And so it's not going to change overnight, but at least I was there to witness like what the impact of this change is actually having for the people that are there that want the change. And
that's why you do what you do.
Yeah, that is why I do what I do. So so that's where I'm at.
House parties and beer cans to
fucking
Saudi Arabia and literally like
Saint-Tropez, like
building a cultural movement.
Yeah, like it's
freaking awesome, man.
Crazy.
Thank you.
And even through all the ups and downs, she still was able to pull all that off. I mean, I appreciate the out of this woman. She has been huge in my life.
Yes.
So
I mean,
huge in many others as well.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. And I will say that the best thing for me this time around is that because I had gone through this sort of like essentially like a career nervous breakdown, and had gotten so burnt out and was so like just angry and unhappy, that coming back into it this time around, I was able to like look at it with a totally different view and really be able to appreciate what I was doing and not be so like tightly wrapped up in it that I didn't have any fun. Because that was the number one thing that I regretted working at Insomniac, is that I don't feel like I ever gave myself a chance to have fun.
Yeah, right.
And so I do regret those moments of being like, oh, I'm super proud of what we've done, but I don't actually get to enjoy it because I'm, too worried that, we've got one kid overdosing on the ground here. There's a fight breaking out at check-in, there's just so much going on that I just never got to really enjoy it. So being able to go back this time and have a different kind of mental approach and outlook, really changed it and really made a big difference for me.
That's some great advice to give, like everybody struggling, especially doing what we do, even TV, movies, like it's going to be a struggle, but if you stay consistent with it, you can look at it from a different perspective. It's a whole different ball game.
A whole different ball game, and like just being able to appreciate. I was never good at appreciating what I've done. And I think that it was funny because I gave this advice to one of the younger girls that I was working with in Saudi Arabia. I was like, listen, I was like, the only advice I can give you is like just take a second and enjoy it. Like just be proud of what you've done. Like stop, walk around, look at what you've done, and just take a moment to be like, I did this, because that really is what helps to kind of ground you and keep you focused into like why you're killing yourself over it in the first place. So
did you want to talk about what it was like being a woman in the industry, going to Saudi Arabia as a person in power?
Yeah, that was
touch on that.
Sure. I get asked that a lot. It's funny because my response is I was actually more worried about being American than I was being a woman.
That's fair.
And
That's fair
and it sounds harsh, but it's the truth. And the reason is, obviously there's a lot of tension between our two countries. And Americans, no matter what they think, I've done a lot of traveling. The verdict is out on how we're perceived around the world.
Oh yeah.
So you have to be really careful.
That's not a good one.
And so,
Clown Central over here.
I would say that like I already kind of knew what to expect being a woman, so it didn't really like. I have now been to China, I was in Japan, and again, I was like one of the only women. It was funny. Japan was another one that I had to like fight for the respect. That when I first got there, like I wasn't invited to the meetings. I wasn't invited to the like executive dinners because it was only men. I wasn't invited to the karaoke nights. Like it was like the legitimate, like I was iced out because I was a woman. And I started to, I'm very like adamant about when I go to a different country about like learning about the culture, and especially in a business kind of sense. And once I started to really like put forth this like sort of energy of trying to do things the Japanese way, I think that the team on the ground for the Skydeck in Japan, because it was a very specific team, literally went from like ignoring me to like they wouldn't even move a chair without my permission. So it was a really interesting cultural shift that I kind of won them over in that respect. And then once they kind of understood who I was in my position, because everything in Japan is about, like respect and your position and where you are, they they're bowing to me, like everything kind of shifted. I still wasn't invited to the executive dinners, but I kind of got over that, because that's just, you can only change a culture so much when you're in these places.
They let you in the karaoke room this time, though, or
no?
Damn.
I didn't. We did our own
because
because
serious there.
But
We love karaoke.
As always, I like find a way around it, because then I just
need some
go
drinks,
like,
I'm just saying.
we would have our own, like the
Yeah.
VA, when I was traveling abroad, I didn't get to bring the whole team with me to every single event. So I was there a lot of the times by myself, navigating and just kind of overseeing the on the ground team from whatever country we're in. But so going to Saudi Arabia, I had already like dealt with and even here, like Mike knows, I used to make Mike go ask XYZ club person because they're not listening to me. Like I had no ego with it because I just needed to get something done.
Yeah.
So Mike would go ask, they would do it. Like they'd ignore me, It was this. So I had been kind of in this world already of being very used to being like, I just need to get it done. I don't care how to get it done. So I'll send a guy to go ask another guy if that means they're going to do it.
And that's how I became the front face of the Skydeck. Not even kidding. That's
Yeah.
how I
Yeah.
became the front face of the Skydeck.
I mean, I wasn't an idiot. Like I wasn't naive to what was actually happening, and I needed the operation to run. So I just was like, fine, go talk to this person. They're not listening to me. And when I got to Saudi Arabia, I kind of already knew that was going to be, it was going to be a similar kind of infrastructure of like women in power there is still kind of a newer thing for them. But I have to say, like, all in all, I did not have a bad experience as a woman. I think there was one instance where, we had to do this big on the ground meeting for like the police, the local government. Like it was a big like exterior ops kind of meeting. And that was the only meeting where the government officials would not allow women into the meeting. And our partner out there, who was kind of like the client, like the Saudi Arabia like production company, was like, well, all like it's all women that are like in charge. And they were like, nope, sorry. So everyone's like, oh, aren't you upset? I'm like, no, I don't care. I don't want to sit in this meeting anyway. I found ways around it. Does it annoy the hell out of me at times? Yes, absolutely. There's been a lot of times when I've been really frustrated that being a female has like inherently worked against me. But I think as I get older and as I've kind of moved on and as I've kind of grown as like as just a person, it's just part of this world that I'm in. And all I can do is what I've been trying to do since day one is stand up for myself, stand up for other women, and keep fighting against it the best I can.
I think you're doing a great job of it.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
I mean, she's dropped some wisdom, and I think a lot of females out there that are in her position can, definitely a role model to look up to on all the things she's been through, and like it's been a great conversation. And I just got to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you've done for me and our little family. Without you, none of us exist. I don't exist in this industry, which means my mental breakdowns didn't happen, which didn't lead to this.
We wouldn't
so
be
me
here.
and you're grateful for.
Mama in the house.
No, but
Thank
on that
you.
note,
That means a lot.
Any last words before we get out of here?
It's amazing with the little things that that you did in the past, the little creations that you made. You just never know where they're gonna go and like what fruit they're gonna bear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to
It
hear
is.
that you created something that at the time was just something that it was part of your job that now the whole world recognizes as something important to them as a culture.
Thank you.
It's cool.
Thank
Really
you.
awesome.
So we hope you had a good time on the show with us today.
I did.
Appreciate you being here so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time on The Chaos. Peace.